book lovers. It is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about some of my favorite duologies that I would recommend to you guys. So if you don't know, this happens to be a 7 on Sunday. I am the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the Goodreads page down in the description where you can check it out, and you can also participate in a topic in the future and contribute your ideas. And this week's topic was actually suggested by Abby from Abby Lisi the Book Lover, one of my favorite booktubers on here. Bonus, she's Australian. Shout out to you, Abby. I will link her channel down in the description as well so you can check her out and support her. She pretty much suggested a bunch of series ideas when it comes to 7 on Sunday. You know, I like talking about series, kind of goes hand in hand with my interests as well. But see, here's the thing, I do tend to talk about duologies in not the most positive light. I'll accept them. That being said, I do prefer longer series, and when a series is contracted to be a duology and it ends up being too rushed towards the end when it could have just been expanded into a trilogy or a quartet or something like that, it's kind of a sad situation. That being said, there are some duologies out there that I absolutely do love, and regardless of them being too short, in my opinion, in other people's opinions, it's just perfect. It's the right kind of series that they would want to read. I often actually get DMs. People keep on asking, oh, what's a standalone that you would recommend that's a good fantasy standalone? I can't give one because I rarely read standalones, but I can give duology recommendations. I have 7 of them I'm going to recommend. So I guess without further ado, let's get into my duology recommendations. The first one I want to recommend is a duology that is only really, I believe, getting hype now because the spin-off duology is getting a lot of hype right now. It's also a retelling of a famous story, and that is Mulan. And that, my friends, is the Spin the Dawn duology by Elizabeth Lim. I don't know if this was actually overshadowed by the Mulan movie. What I do know is that not many of my friends have actually read this series. Honestly, if you haven't, read it. It's probably the best Mulan retelling so far that I've read. It's really good and it's really engaging. It's not like a typical like warrior story. It's Mulan as if she was a royal tailor, essentially. So it's Project Runway meets Mulan. It works very well. If you like the Disney Channel story, then you will most definitely love this book, but it doesn't hide away from more young adult themes, and it just makes for a good, entertaining read. I don't think I've read a Mulan retelling I've loved or I've been more intrigued by than this series here. So a lot of people do say that Spin the Dawn should have been one book. I do like the expansion, but I kind of wish that the second book was longer. I'm not saying that this series should have been a trilogy, considering we're getting a spin-off, even though the spin-off kind of is based on a story that is told in this book series. This being said, I think it's because there's a main character who's in this book that doesn't show up till later in the second book, and it just feels very rushed and very short. That's my opinion on the second book. That being said, I did love this duology altogether, so some people will just want to read the first book and they'll be fine with the cliffhanger, or they can continue on with the second book and see where it goes from there. But yeah, the second book is definitely a lot darker in terms of themes. It's all a good time. It's all very intriguing. So this is a duology that I would highly recommend. I just don't think that it gets talked about enough. This duology here is a duology I read a long time ago. In fact, I'm not too sure if you guys remember the really bad reading funk I had like 2019. It was really hard for me to read anything besides reading the Berserk manga. Like I was reading that nonstop. And then I ended up picking up a young adult series that I actually was kind of intrigued in. The Daughter of the Pirate King duology. I wasn't expecting to love this one as much as I did, but I ended up really enjoying it. I think I was going through a phase where I was just saying no to any kind of young adult fantasy. It's really funny because my shelves are now filled with young adult fantasy. I have myself back now, which is great. I picked this series up not really expecting to have a great time, but I did. I had a great time. People are 50-50 about this. Not everybody loves the romance. I like the romance. It's a bit snarky. It's a bit fun. I enjoy that, and I'm happy that this was a duology rather than a standalone. So far, it's my favorite series, written by Trisha Levenseller. I have read Blade of Secrets. Not as much of a fan of that series as I am with the Daughter of the Pirate King duology. That being said, Trisha Levenseller proved to me that she could be potentially one of my favorite authors through the series. I would recommend this if you would like a good piratey slash sea read. Funnily enough, the next duology on this list also falls under that category. All the Stars and Teeth series by Adeline Grace, so that consists of All the Stars and Teeth and All the Tides of Fate. I really enjoyed this series. I feel like I picked it up before I started hearing people talk about it. The ending of this book had a twist that I did did not see coming, and it just kept me entertained the entire time. As much as I would like to see this series expanded upon, it doesn't shy away from its shock factor. That's what I noticed. So if you like a good C read that's like a darker side of YA, I would recommend All the Stars and Teeth. I also really liked the characters in here. I did find one character to be annoying. That being said, they weren't always in the way, so I forgave that. I don't know what else to say about the series except for the fact that I really did enjoy it. I would recommend it, especially if you enjoyed the Daughter of the Pirate King duology, because it kind of has a similar feel to it, and I haven't felt that way about a book series since reading Daughter of the Pirate King. Two of the duologies that just happen to be on my shelf remind me of each other. Then I've got to talk about a duology that has an absolutely special space in my heart. I wish that this series got expanded upon. I wish the series was a trilogy because it deserved that treatment. But we got what we got, and I just have to accept that. And that, my friends, is the Bone Grace duology, which consists of Bone Crier's Moon and Bone Crier's Dawn. I love this duology so much, and I think the reason why I really wanted it to be a trilogy is because there's a lot of fascinating mythology surrounding the premise of the story. I would go as far as to say that this could be a quartet. I felt like this was a premise for a very long book series that got reduced to 2 books. It actually makes me sad, but I'm happy that it happened. It teaches the power of friendship and sisterhood, and also unconditional love, I guess, because you get 2 different characters from 2 different spaces of life. One is essentially following this mythology that believes in sacrifice, and then the other one happens to be a victim of that system. They learn to fall in love and understand each other's side of the story. I like that. I think that that was really cool, and it was actually very well done for a duology. I don't want to like spend the entire video complaining about how I think series should have been expanded upon. This being said, if there was a series that I wish out of all of these books, or these series that I wanted to be longer than a duology, it's definitely the Bone Grace series. This being said, I would recommend this duology regardless. If you are wanting a quick read, it's still very engrossing and still has a very interesting premise. The Bone Grace duology is that duology for you. I would recommend this duology because there's so much mystery and thrill in it, and also there's a hate to love romance. Like, who doesn't love that if you love romance? And I gotta talk about another duology that not everybody talks about anymore. I personally want to reread it because I really liked the political intrigue in this duology. This duology is actually, I'd say, best for its political intrigue. It's actually very well done in terms of that. I mean, it sounds like it's gonna be a lot more fantastical in terms of the animal life that is in this duology, but it's a lot more political than that. And that, my friends, is the Stormcrow duology by Kaylin Josephson. That consists of the Stormcrow and the Crow Rider. Yeah, so you think that this series is all about crows, essentially. No, it's not. This series has a very political plot line where the main character essentially has to marry into another family for an alliance. The mother or the queen in that family is not the best person at all. Kind of terrifying in a way, because I wouldn't want to find myself in that situation where I had no control over what was going on. I'm also terrified of crows, actually. So like, reading this series at first, I was initially turned off by these covers because they have crows on them, and as much as the covers are absolutely pretty, I'm really scared of crows. This being said, I ended up loving the series, and for some reason I found some sort of sympathy for some crows because the antagonist does not like the crows. I wanted to protect the crows for my life. That's weird to say, considering I'm afraid of crows. This duology is very good, I'd say, and I would recommend it to anybody who is looking for a political fantasy plotline that has some creatures in it as well. The second last duology I have to bring up is not a duology that I would have brought up beforehand if I didn't find out that it is at the moment staying as a duology. It actually saddens me to find out that this was cut to a duology because it had trilogy potential, and even the author said themselves that they intended the story to be a trilogy, but it can still stand alone as a duology. I mean, they're even releasing a duology box set. At the moment, it's just gonna stay a duology until maybe the author changes their mind in the future. Who knows? The Villains duology by V.E. Schwab. What absolutely devastates me is the fact that this is not gonna be a trilogy, but that's okay. The funny thing is, not everybody likes vengeful, but I preferred vengeful. I think it's because everybody has loved vicious for so many years. I remember everybody talking about this in my early days of booktube and saying that it's like the best book by Victoria Schwab. I'd say that it's okay, but I actually really love vengeful. Victoria Schwab does amazing with her sequels. That's my personal opinion. It kind of seems like a companion duology in some way, but it still has the same characters. I think it's because Marcella, who's a new character, gets introduced in the second book, and she ends up being one of the main protagonists. And I found her so interesting as a character, regardless of whether it is going to be a trilogy in the future or whether it's going to stay as a duology. I would recommend it. The final duology that I have on this this list today is a duology that I wouldn't ask to have expansion. You know, maybe like a spin-off, but I am super satisfied with this series being a duology. It just so happens to be my favorite duology of all time. And that, my friends, is the Strange the Dreamer duology by Laini Taylor, which consists of Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares. I have been raving about this duology since I first read it. And if you've been on my channel for that long, for 4 years, you would know how much Strange the Dreamer has really impacted me and my reading life. Kind of just introduced me to this whole world of magical realism, a genre that I never thought that I would ever get into, but I did. And it's one of my favorite genres to delve into, even though I still need to read more of it. I guess it's the reason why I'm into books by Haruki Murakami. If I see a magical realism just pop up out of nowhere, I start taking interest in it. I never used to take interest in these things until Strange the Dreamer came into my life. I think it's because I had a bad experience with the Raven Cycle Quartet, unfortunately, and a lot of people actually do have amazing experiences with that series. But in my case, I kind of just decided not to read any magical realism because I just didn't enjoy that series. I kind of put magical realism all into a stereotype until I read this duology, and I'm so happy that I broke free from that because it's truly the best duology I've ever read. I know not everybody agrees with this opinion, but Laini Taylor is one of my favorite authors. This duology was the first book series from them that I absolutely fell in love with, and in the future I plan to read more from them. It's just I really hope that they actually publish more stuff. I know that they are a slow writer, it's understandable, but Laini, I really need another book from you, please. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social media. I'm at gswizzlebooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also at Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And I'm also at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok. If you want to follow me there, I need incentive to post. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it into double. Started out with half and I flipped it into double.